Today, I'm going to be taking you on the first ever tour of Harvard University Press. We're going to go behind the scenes, go room by room, as well as do a bookshelf tour with a special focus on their classical library sets. You see here the Loeb Classical Library, the I Tatti Renaissance Library, the Dumbarton Oaks Medieval Library, and the Murty Classical Library of India. And what's special about these is that they preserve the classics in their original language, but they also have English on the other side. Before we get to the tour itself, I want to tell you about the free resources kit that goes along with this video, as well as a little bit of the backstory of how this first ever tour of Harvard University Press came to be. Some of you may remember last year, I uploaded this video, Tour the Largest Home Library on Reddit. This is somebody who has a complete edition of the Loeb Classical Library. As you can see, it takes up an entire wall of his library. And what happened is a couple days after we uploaded this video, Harvard University Press commented. And my first thought was, it'd be great to actually tour and see behind the scenes how these book sets are made, because there's nobody else really doing it like this. And so the video ended up going viral. We got some shout outs from Harvard University Press on Twitter and on Blue Sky, as well as Facebook. And the editorial director of Harvard University Press, Sharmila, who you're going to meet in this video, also retweeted our video as it was going viral in November of last year. And this photo of Greg's wall of books, wall of the Loeb Classical Library, ended up going viral on Twitter with over 300,000 views. And we even got a shout out from Michael McGill, who's going to be sharing his classical library in a future bookshelf tour, which I've already recorded with him earlier this year. We also got a shout out on the Librarianologist, which is a really great Facebook group for people that like bookshelf tours. There's an Ozymandias reference there. And somebody shared our video on pretty much every social media. Blue Sky, Pinterest, Mastodon, Threads. Greg's photo even found its way onto TikTok. And Greg's library was also mentioned on an interview with Sharmila earlier this year on the History of Literature podcast. We even got a shout out from Tim Spaulding, who's the founder of LibraryThing, which is a great piece of software for organizing your library, keeping track of all your different books. And maybe the highest compliment is there was even a meme created. Last year, I interviewed Greg of Reddit, and we did a bookshelf tour of his library. He's one of the few people who owns the complete Loeb Classical Library, as well as the complete I Tatti Renaissance Library, and the complete Dumbarton Oaks Medieval Library. But he had one thing missing in his library, the Murty Classical Library of India. And so what I decided to do after it went viral, it's my first big viral hit, I decided I wanted to give Greg a gift as a thank you, as a token of appreciation for all the time he spent with me several months over the summer, recording the video, as well as several other videos that are going to be coming out soon. And so I placed an order to purchase the entire Murty Classical Library of India. And I had the books shipped directly to Harvard University Press at 79 Garden Street so that we could incorporate them into the video. On July 3rd of this year, I went to the offices of Harvard University Press at 79 Garden Street in Cambridge, Mass. And we filmed this tour. And now, filming this intro today, the original video that I filmed with Greg is now the #1 most viewed bookshelf tour video on all of YouTube of all the bookshelf tour videos uploaded in the last 12 months, with now over 212,000 views. And I just FedExed that via 2-day airmail to Greg a couple weeks ago. And so 3 big FedEx boxes, and we're going to be doing a live unboxing and AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything. We're going to be going for 3 hours. And so if you have any questions for Greg, anything you want to ask him about his library, how he does things, his favorite books, any question you may have, we're going to be doing a live AMA, and you can register for that. That's going to be in a couple weeks, down in the first link in the description. You can also leave a comment down below if you have any questions you'd like me to ask Greg on your behalf during that AMA. To celebrate this first ever tour of Harvard University Press, I've organized a giveaway of books from both my own personal collection as well as from HUP. And the details of that giveaway are down in the first link in the description. And all of these books we're giving away are signed by the editorial director of Harvard University Press, Sharmila. You may recognize some of these books from my original videos reviewing these series back over a year ago. And those videos, I've done videos on all 4 of these major classical sets. And for all 4 sets, they're the most viewed videos for each set, reviewing them. And they're between about half an hour to an hour long, giving you very in-depth details that I drew together from doing a lot of research on each of these sets. This all started with me reviewing the Loeb Classical Library set and the other sets last year, uploading those videos, and then wondering, I wonder if anybody owns this entire Loeb Classical Library. And if they do, what else do they read? What else do they have in their library? Because they must be an interesting person to have that entire set. And so I found somebody on Reddit who owned the entire set, and I reached out to him. We had a 2-hour phone call. He agreed to do a bookshelf tour. And what was originally just going to be 2 or 3 hours turned into an epic 9+ hour bookshelf tour that we filmed over the summer. And then that video immediately went viral, and that led to Harvard University Press commenting on the video, which then led to doing this bookshelf tour that you're watching now. Another quick thing is that I put together a classical libraries spreadsheet a year ago when I put out the original Greg of Reddit bookshelf tour. I've now updated that to version 2.0, added a bunch of extra details. And that spreadsheet contains all the major sets, both from Harvard University Press and from other presses, for this special format of books that has the original language on the left and then translated into English on the right. And there's only a handful of presses that actually do this in a major way. I've collected that all into one place for the first time ever. This doesn't exist anywhere else online, and it will save you dozens of hours of research that I've spent over the last couple of years putting all this information together in one place, and it's completely free. So that's also in the first link in the description. That's part of the bonus kit of resources that goes along with this video. Another thing you're going to get in the free resources kit is super high res photos of what the complete set looks like for each of these classical library sets. So if you want to get a sense of what these might look like in your home, there's really nothing else like these out there. And you also get a link to Greg's complete library, which was also part of the original video with Greg. I'm also putting timestamps in the description of this video. So if you want to skip around and see what you're going to learn over the 3+ hours of this video, that's all down below in the description. Another quick note is if you have any questions you'd like me to ask Sharmila, we're actually doing a part 2 of this tour because I didn't get to ask her all the questions I'd planned to ask. We recorded this tour the day before July 4th, which is a holiday. We stayed till 6 p.m. and we still didn't get to a lot of my questions. And so if you have anything you'd like me to ask, just put it down in the comments below and I'll ask her as many questions as I can. We're also going to be uploading that video to this channel, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to get that. Finally, I'd like to make a quick request, which is if you have a library you'd like to share and you'd like to do a bookshelf tour with me, please email me at timothy@timothykenny.com, Kenny. Also, if you run a local independent bookstore that has a library-like feel, personal library-like feel, or if you run a library that has a special collection or something unique about it and you'd like to do this kind of bookshelf tour with me, definitely let me know either in person or over the internet using photos like I did with Greg of Reddit. Definitely reach out to me as well. Also, if you have in mind a person or institution that you'd like me to do a bookshelf tour with, you can email me at that same address as well, and I can reach out to them for you. Thanks, and without any further ado, let's get into the video.
Timothy, let's go inside Harvard University Press. This is Kittredge Hall, and this has been our home since the 1960s. This entire area used to be botanical gardens owned by Harvard. That's why some of those buildings across the street are still called Botanic Gardens. And Kittredge Hall used to be the university's herbarium. Before we moved here, we used to be in another part of campus, but since the 60s, this has been our home. Come, let me show you where we work. Timothy, normally I go to my office in a different direction, but today I want to go through the library. Come with me. Come in. This is one of my favorite spaces in the office. Sometimes I meet with authors here, sometimes we have meetings here. It's a beautiful space because of all the books that are here. You can see all the books we've published over the years, but there's another reason I love meeting in this office, and that's here. These photographs. Remember how I told you Kittredge Hall was once the university herbarium? This is what the herbarium looked like, the inside. And that's the outside of the building when there were botanical gardens all around here.
How many floors are there?
There are 3 floors in this building. I correct myself, 3 floors above ground and 2 floors below ground. So I guess you could say 5 floors. Sales, marketing, publicity departments are on this floor. Production, design as well on this floor. And upstairs is editorial and the rights department. Let's actually start here. I want to show you a very special sign. For many years, we used to have a little shop in Harvard Square, and outside the shop, the sign used to hang. And when the shop was closed down in around 2009, we brought the sign with us. So I like looking at that sign. Now we're moving into the editorial wing. This part of the building is acquisitions editorial. Shall we see if there's some editors who might say hi to us? Yeah? We don't want to disturb them too much. Here's our editor for science. Hi, Asaf.
Hi.
We'll look through these bookshelves later, but just take a view. This is our treasure trove. Let's see if this is one of our editorial assistants, Sana. Sana, can I say hi to you? Hi, Sana.
Hi.
I'm Sana. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. What do you do here?
I'm working as an editorial assistant.
Can we take a peek inside your office?
Yes, please do.
What's that?
This here.
Poetics and Music.
So this is a forthcoming title at the press. It's a reissue of one of Stravinsky's Norton lectures here at Harvard. And we have a few coming out. So you'll see Borges, John Ashbery, Umberto Eco, and Ben Shahn. So those will be released in the fall.
Awesome. Well, thanks for showing us around.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Sana. Oh, and look what we find right outside of Sana's door. You recognize these?
The Loebs.
They're the Loebs.
And what, are these in some kind of order or just?
Well,
Looks like it's a mix.
it's in mix. It should be in alphabetical order by author's name. But I want to show you some Loebs that are even more dear to me. This is our shelf copy, right?
What does that mean?
These are every Loeb that we publish, we keep the most recent copy here. This is a little secret collection. Very few people get to see this. These are Loebs that almost 15 years ago I went and I bought from various used bookstores around Cambridge when we were beginning the Loeb digitization project. And I really wanted to see how the different spines fade. And isn't this amazing? Look at this. I mean, have you ever seen a turquoise Loeb?
No. Where it is.
Yeah. I love this because I think this is what a Loeb collection in someone's actual home, if they're lucky to have so many Loebs, that's what it looks like. Because only a publisher has Loebs that look like that. That looks like, you know, all brand new. But this is what I think of as Loebs as they really look in people's homes, right? Which is often a mix of the old and the new, used copies and new. Some of those Loebs there have been since put out of print. So for that reason, they're also very special to me because those are no longer available for sale. We also have here the I Tatti Renaissance Library, which is a series that we've been publishing since 2000, so 25 years old. These are all the I Tattis currently in print.
It's quite a bookshelf there.
It is. If you zoom in a little more closely, can you tell me, do you see something unusual about the spines of these I Tattis?
Yeah, this one's almost fully sun-washed.
That's true. Yes.
Oh yeah, the logo. The
That's
logo.
right. That's
Refresh.
right. Exactly. So you can see here again, these are alphabetically by author name, but you can actually see this was the old logo, and now you see the new logo.
And can you explain the symbolism?
Well, the original I Tatti logo is actually, it's a bee, and it's a play on Bernard Berenson's initials. Bernard Berenson is the American whose estate, the Villa I Tatti, is where the Harvard Center Villa I Tatti, which is outside of Florence, is located. And his initials are BB, and that's a bee. And the new logo is also a bee. It's a more abstract, stylized bee. But yes.
Maybe we could also talk about we could pull one of these Loebs off the shelf and you could talk about the symbolism of the logo.
Let's see.
And there's also sort of a pattern up and on the top and bottom.
Absolutely. Let's take a look here. Polybius. Well, this is the classic Greek keys. And then you have Athena here. And if you look really closely, can you read something that's in Athena's shield that's placed beneath her elbow?
It's JCL, right?
What might that be?
I know it's Loeb, but
Yes.
I'm forgetting his other.
I think these are initials. So you can see, and that JCL appears right here.
And we're going to be looking at some dies later. That's going
Yeah.
to be interesting.
Exactly. I love looking, whenever a book comes from the printer, the first thing, many of us do, I'm not alone, is I take it out, put this aside, and I look at this. You know what I do next? I do this. And I like doing this to make sure everything's as it should be. And you check the spine, just the Greek keys.
I've never seen somebody do that before.
It's maybe it's a publishing thing. It's just a way of checking. You know how academics read books?
Back to front.
Yes. You know what they begin with?
Bibliography.
Acknowledgements.
Oh, yeah.
To see that they're in there. Then they read the bibliography. Then they read the front. That's an old joke. Every academic begins with the acknowledgements. Am I thanked? So let's look at what the inside of a red or Latin lobe.
And also counting
looks
how many
like.
times you're in the index.
Yes. Very important. Let me see here. Do you know what this number is about? Has anyone ever explained this?
I think it's the volume number.
Not quite. It's what's called a Loeb number, and it's actually not that complicated. It simply reflects the order of publication. So it's the 398th Loeb that we publish. So sometimes, here's a funny little thing, you could have many works by one author or many works across volumes, and they will be in non-sequential numbers because, see, all the volumes are not published sequentially. So you can have, Caesar and like Loeb 325, 125. I'm making up these numbers, of course. So it's kind of a little curiosity. I strongly recommend everybody don't shelf your Loebs by this number. I mean, you could, and you'll have a hell of a time then finding the book you're looking for. That's why you'll notice on our shelf, they're actually not shelved by Loeb numbers, but by author
And
name.
what do you do when there's multiple authors?
In one, it'll have one Loeb number. This number is just, you know what it is? It's just a publishing curiosity, which book went to the printer in which order. That's all.
But I mean, how do you put it in alphabetical order?
If it's whoever's the first, so it's ABC within the cluster, right? If it's three authors,
like
it's
early Greek philosophy. Isn't there a series
then
like
you
that?
would just go, if there's no author, say for instance, there could be something with no attribution, or then you just go by the, this is, by the way, not just for Loeb, any of our series, right? Then you use the title and go alpha by title, right? Beowulf is a great one. Who wrote Beowulf? We don't know. It's the Beowulf poet, right? So it's under
right
B.
up there. Maybe we should take a quick look
It's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. So this is a series that is very dear to my heart because it's a series that I acquired in my second year at HUP. I came to HUP in 2006, and in 2007 I got a phone call from one of my former colleagues and dear friend, Jan Ziolkowski, who had just become the director of Dumbarton Oaks, which is a Harvard Center in Washington, D.C. And Jan is a scholar of medieval Latin, and he had long wanted to do something for European medieval literature, what Loeb did for Greek and Latin classics. And when he became director of Dumbarton Oaks, it was his opportunity, and I had just come to the press. So that's how this series was started. The first books came out in 2010, so the series has now 15 years old. It's a very prolific series. We started with medieval Latin, Byzantine Greek, and Old English. And very recently, we introduced a fourth language group, Iberian. So the dream is this too will be a series that will go on for a long time and include many different medieval European languages. But we wanted to start with 3 first, and we've added the 4th. When the sort of the chronology of when we're at Dumbarton Oaks Medieval Library, we call it DOML in-house. It's kind of a silly acronym, but that's what we call it, where it begins and where it ends. So it's a funny story. It goes back to around 2008 when we were talking about what the chronological span of this series will be, and we remembered a really well-regarded and loved scholar of medieval literature, an Old English scholar called Fred Robinson. He actually used to be my teacher too, and Jan Zielkowski knew him. And Fred once said, at a lecture he gave at the Medieval Academy of America, that the Middle Ages begin where antiquity ends, and it ends where the Renaissance begins, and it's not our problem that those fields don't know where they end or begin.
Yeah, we can take a quick peek at the poster.
Yes.
Is there a story behind this?
Well, the story is we wanted to start off with a bang, and we wanted to get somebody fancy to say, give us their, stamp of approval. And Harold Bloom was the person who came forward. And so here is Harold Bloom telling us that what a project of extraordinary intellectual and cultural value this is going to be. It was very kind of him to say that when we were just starting. I hope we've lived up to everything he imagined it would be.
We can take a quick look now at the Murtys.
Absolutely. So, when we added the Dumbarton Oaks Medieval Library, I felt very satisfied knowing that between Loeb and the I Tatti, we had nearly at least 2,000 years of Western classics covered, right? From ancient Greece and Rome, all the way through the Middle Ages and to the Italian Renaissance. And then around 2009, I got a phone call from the Sanskritist Sheldon Pollock, who had been looking for a series, trying to start a new series of Indic classics. And a friend of his had told him to contact me. Sheldon Pollock had previously been the general editor of the Clay Sanskrit Library, which NYU Press used to publish. That series has now ended. That was a series of Sanskrit classics, the Clay Sanskrit Library. Shelley Pollock's vision for this was it's going to be all the classical languages of the Indian subcontinent. So we're going to have Sanskrit, but also Persian, also Tamil, also Hindi, also Punjabi, etc. Nothing like that had ever been attempted before. And when he called me, he said, I've heard that you know how to work on these and you've even started one. I had just started the medieval one. So I had learned a couple of things at that point. And he said, what do you think of this idea? And I said, I like it. I have one condition. I said, can we not do the Indic language side in transliteration? Because the Clay Sanskrit Library, the Sanskrit is in transliteration, right? So it's in the Roman alphabet. And I said, for over 100 years, Harvard University Press has published Greek in Greek. we can certainly do Sanskrit in Devanagari and, Persian in Nask and Urdu in Nastaliq, etc. And he said, I love this idea. And I think not many publishers in America were crazy enough to try it, but we were crazy. So here you go. Look at this. So this is what I meant. We were not going to have this side be in English, in the Roman script, but let's look at how many different, we have 8 or 9 different scripts going. It's really fun. This one, I have a story I have to show you. So with the Dumbarton Oaks series, we started introducing ribbons. Come this way, I want to show you something. So Loeb, you can tell if a Loeb is a Latin Loeb or a Greek Loeb just by looking at the cover, right? The green is for Greek, red is for Latin. When I Tatti, everything is, Renaissance, Italian, Latin, so it's okay if they're all light blue. With the Dumbarton Oaks series, Jan and I, our first question was, how on earth will people know what language these are? And we were averse to having different colors because we knew we were going to have more than 2 languages. We were worried about the series looking a little, just kind of all over the place on someone's shelf. So we wanted people to have this kind of beautiful, uniform bookshelf, but an easy way. So this is what we did. The ribbons are color-coded. So Old English is blue, Latin is dark red. Let's find...
Why do the dust jackets tend to have different kind of hues to them?
And purple, usually, I'll tell you about that. And purple was for Byzantine Greek. We have a kind of a new color for the Iberian. That is more about changing printers. That's not by intention. Thank you for bringing it up and breaking my heart all over again. But you're exactly right. They're intended to be, this to me is the color. Sometimes it has to do with fading. So some of it really is, there is no book you can make and say you'll have it on your shelf, even, if it's at home, that the color won't fade or somehow change over time. And sometimes we really can't also control how it does. That's really something I would love to have a chemist come here and talk to us about it. Why does the green fade at different rates, right? Even sometimes when it's the same dye, same paper, same printer. The other thing that happens, of course, is when you have to change printers and so forth, which publishers sometimes have to. With ribbons, for instance, the ribbon we were using for one of the language groups in the medieval series, the manufacturer discontinued making that particular ribbon color. So we had to have, it was a long sort of saga in trying to find another manufacturer who would have a ribbon of that particular similar fabric that would be as close a color as possible. And that can happen again. That's just manufacturers of all our ribbons could suddenly say, we're not doing that green anymore. So that's the risk you take.
For the ribbons, do you generally tuck the end back in or do you leave it hanging?
When it's my book, I tuck it in.
Is there a special way to do it or is there a right way to do it?
Of course.
The Harvard way?
Just the right way. Synonymous with the Harvard way. What are we talking about? No. This is how it's, by the way, this is how it's come from the printer. These are absolute pristine copies. No one has touched them, right? So when the printer sends it in, look, this is how they do it. They have folded it back up. But a real human being, if I had a book with a thing, I would leave it like this, because that's how you would know where it's your page mark, right? But when it arrives from the printer, it's just so that how they can, it's for packing ease, it's tucked in. This is another thing that our colleagues have to check when you introduce ribbons. You have to, when the shipment comes and there's, we make sure that is it the, we spec it all, right?
You spec to the specific page?
No, you don't spec to the, or at least as far as I know, no. That's a great question for someone who works in production. I actually don't know, but we in editorial don't do that. What we do specify in editorial is, well, this is Old English, so it should have the blue ribbon. And then we make sure that it did actually get the blue ribbon, because if there's a mistake, that's why I'm saying the ribbons aren't just ornamental, and it's not just, any random color. It's actually a little code for what's the language. So that's what we had decided to do, is to give a little subtle code to the person that if you just look like this, but you have to look. And now you know you're in Old English. Yeah.
So we'll have more time to talk about these upstairs as we go through.
Yeah, so let's go and look around some other books. One of my favorite things to do here, this is outside my office, is sometimes, I like to just walk and look at the bookshelves and just look at some of these books. And you could just see it's a combination of, there are some books I remember because I've been here for nearly 2 decades, and it could be a book I've done. And then there are some books that go back to the beginning of the press's history. So it's a nice space for all of us in editorial to walk around, because it reminds us of all the authors who've entrusted us with their works over the years. There's a first edition of Schumpeter up there. That's one of my favorites to look at. This is my colleague, Olivia. Olivia, hi, how are you?
Hi. Can you say a little bit about what you do here?
I assist Heather with distributed books, and I also assist our new senior editor in philosophy.
Oh, wow.
And I'm helping out with a few backlist projects.
Cool. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hey, before going to my office, can I show you a couple of other cool things on this floor? Ooh, our mailboxes. Someone has a stack of Loebs waiting for him. You know who this someone is?
I don't.
Mike Sullivan. He is the managing editor of the Loeb Classical Library. Without him, these books would not be coming out. He's really the magic ingredient. This whole wing is where our director's office is, subsidiary rights is, but I wanted to bring you here to show you something kind of cool that very few people, even people who now work in this press, come into these rooms. But when I started, we used to come here all the time because we have paper files. Editors had to keep paper files of every books they worked on. And just a couple of weeks ago, I needed to clear my head. I was dealing with something that was kind of a tough problem. I needed to find a solution. So I was taking a walk around the building. It was late evening. So I was like, I'm going to look up a book file for a book I did in 2007, because we used to do paper book files. I looked up the book file for Mary Beard's Roman Triumph. So it was kind of fun to see my own writing, my colleagues' writings, because it was when, we didn't use digital files. But
By the way, what was that Schumpeter book?
it was up there. It was Creative Destruction. Yeah. All right, should we recreate what I was doing to make
Yes.
myself, just to kind of get my, so, I think you can look at this part, look at this. And,
Wow. You can see some
you could see some
typewriting,
exactly. You could see when, we're changing here.
Back when they made folders really heavy duty.
These folders were, we lived by these folders. This is where, before, it was really not going to be the database, If editors wanted to look up, I'll just give you a little glimpse, even little note cards and things between editors and authors are all kept in here. It just reminds you of, I'm trying to find a file that I actually had made. Look. This is something, look, there's Mary Beard's Invention of Jane Harrison. Do you know that book by any chance? Jane Harrison was one of the first woman classicists. And
that does ring a bell, yeah.
It's she is like the mother who we should all send flowers to. Here's Mary's file for the Parthenon. These are all books I did. And Roman Triumph. So in this era where you can see how this is printed on a computer and cut. Yes, exactly. And I was looking at it and, oh, look, this book even won a prize. We saved all these things.
So how many years do you think this goes back?
Oh, I think this goes back at least to 80s or 70s.
Can we take a quick look at the
Yes, catalog? Yes. This is, I'm kind of telling you things that maybe not even all my colleagues know. I come here to de-stress and think through things, and it's a trip down memory lane. Here, look at these.
A lot of people watching aren't even going to know what these are.
Card catalogs. Libraries used to. Let's pull one out. Absolutely. I can't actually because the way they're.
They're on a line.
Yeah. So you have to. You have to look in there. Sorry.
Okay.
So
what was that used for?
This is really, I think, kind of a database. Look what it says: Harvard University as author, Harvard University as subject. These are different kinds of, I assume, colleagues from decades past, people I don't know, I've never met. They probably, their work lives were before I was even born. This is, I think, how they were searching. If you wanted to, now we have internal databases, plus you look up things on the internet, even of your own history, right? You can Google it. But now, I imagine if someone wanted to find out something about an old HUP author, you have to go. So these are kind of internal reference systems, which is a sort of physical database.
Or like if you wanted another book like Schumpeter on creative destruction, there might be something under
something, right? And then it's like there are all sorts of information about, here, this one you can see, this must be very old because the writing's fading.
These ones come out too.
They do? Okay, so there. Look at this. Oh, here, publication date, 1933.
I'll hold the spot if you want to pull it out.
Okay, 33. It's 1933.
In cursive, you have to be able to read cursive.
Yes. It tells you where it was printed, where it was bound. It tells you the price, the discount of the book. the kind of binding it had, cloth, whether it had an index, what the copyright is.
What is the significance to having a cloth binding?
Cloth binding is also what is, a hardcover book. Most hardcover books, frankly, are not bound in cloth anymore, but in paper. But once upon a time,
I always
there
thought
were.
those boxes are really cool.
These
Like
boxes.
Harvard
This.
special. Yeah.
Yes. It's also the universities. These are boxes that are not HUP. These are Harvard's university's archives and depository boxes.
And what is trilateral?
Triliteral was the name. It was a warehouse that we had built in Rhode Island. We being Harvard, Yale, and MIT. Hence 3 triliteral. It went into operation in the year 2000, built in the late 90s. And here's a funny story. When I came to work at the press in 2006, the CFO, Bill Lindsay, who was one of the original CFOs of the 3 presses, who was really instrumental in the building of Triliteral, told me, Sharmila, we built the warehouse and it went into operation in 2000, just when it became very important for all publishers to get out of the warehousing business. So I'm not in warehousing business, but I remember him saying that. But that's what Triliteral was. Now, more of same of that. Here is another sign from, that room I told you, we used to have a showroom, a little shop in Harvard Square. This used to be there, this sign, so we brought that sign over. I like this sign very much. All right, let's look at a few other interesting spaces. I'm taking you into the inner sanctum, but I think it's okay to go in here. This is the press director's office, but he has an amazing collection of Loeb. So I want to show that to people. He's not here today, but look at that collection he's got right behind his desk. And I'm going to show you something that he's looking at right now. This is these 2 books that I rescued from a storage room in our basement. I love this book plate. We used to have these book plates. (1928). This was published for the American School of Classical Studies at Athens.
And it says HUP Library.
Yes, so we probably had one of those, the library is what you saw, where we keep our shelf copies, but yes, we had a stamp for that. Here, it was printed at the Hestia Press in Athens. And we sometimes look at these because I like to see what we did. This is nearly 100 years ago. This is 98 years ago when we published this. This is amazing. This one, Byzantine mosaics in Greece. This has got some, again, we had this very cool book plate. We don't have these book plates anymore. It says Ex Libris, Harvard University Press Director's Room. But this is what I wanted to show you. Look at this. I mean, it's literally an album where these images are stuck. This is 1931. And the plates are actually affixed to this kind of hard paper. I wonder if that was I don't know enough. I wish I had the time to research this. I wonder if that's how they included color images in a book in the 1930s, you know. It's interesting to look at these things, given what we do now, because sometimes I'll show you some things in my office. Some things you think, oh my God, what a different world. And sometimes you realize they were people, publishers, editors, printers were dealing with a lot of the same challenges. And it's nice to see what their solutions were to those challenges.
You don't see a lot of fountain pens like that anymore.
No. Actually, here's a really nice desk. We like this desk. This is an 18th century desk. Isn't that nice?
Is there a special name for that kind of disc?
A secretary, I think, when you open it up. Well, if the power goes out, we're all set here. Ah, this is an interesting thing here. This was my gift to our director when he first came. This is another thing I really found. This was our office in the 1950s on Quincy Street in Cambridge. This building no longer is there, it was moved. But this is where the press used to be in the 50s. And here I had found, this is 38 Quincy Street. We moved there in July 1st, 1932. We stayed there for 16 years until 1850. Sorry, we stayed there 16 years. It was built in 1850, excuse me. We left in February 1948, right around when the war ended.
Do you know why they got rid of
The building?
the garden, or why they decided to convert this?
Oh, this Kittredge Hall from the Herbarium to this? I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if there are herbariums anymore in any universities. Maybe that's just it's subsumed under the Department of Life, biology or something like that. All right, let's go and look at some fun things in my office, and you get a chance to maybe sit down if you want. Been making you walk around.
Looking forward to seeing your bookshelves.
I love my bookshelves. Come on in. So this is my office. And that's the Clay Sanskrit Library up there. I told you that NYU Press published.
It's got that turquoise color.
It's got the turquoise color, yeah. It's almost a Tiffany blue. And the logo, I guess it changes. I love the elephant. There's something else. Yeah. Oh, look, The Life of Buddha by Ashwagosha. Translated by Patrick Olivel. Oh my God, he's a really first-rate scholar. He has a biography of Ashoka out right now. Great. Beautiful. You know what this says right here? It's Devanagari, Clay, K-L, and this is the short vowel A. So Clay Sanskrit Library, that's Saraswati, goddess of learning and music. And she is present. Could you put this up for me?
Well, do we want to say anything about the other logo?
Oh, yes. You know, I don't know what this other logo refers to. It looks like almost nearly like a Himalayan deity. I wonder if it's written anywhere.
When did you pick up these?
I bought the entire Clay Sanskrit Library when we were beginning discussions of starting the Murty Classical Library. I needed that for reference. That, to me, to understand that series was going to be critical to starting this series. Not because it's the same, but there are lessons there. And really, I think in Western publishing, that's the only other series of facing page Indic classics. So I had to have that as my reference. Yeah. I was just showing you, see, that was the goddess of learning. I showed you in that. And she's up there. I've never had an office where I have not had her, that sandalwood carving. I gotta have the goddess of learning in every office. If she abandons me, I'm really in deep trouble. So you can see these are all these are not all the Murtis and the Dumbarton Oaks. I've run out of space in my shelves, so I no longer have the most recent books because you could see what's happening over there. But it's out there. What else do we have? Fun things to show you. What I use as a paperweight sometimes is this. It's a Loeb Classical Library paperweight. I have no idea, to be honest, when and why these were made, but a former production director of HUP, John Walsh, gave this to me as a present when he retired. I don't know who else has it, but I really like this.
It's really cool.
It's very cool. Do you think other people would like to have it?
I do.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more. I have, so you see the books out here. These are books that I've edited personally. Same here. There are obviously lots of books from other publishers. Those are just mine. These are books that are coming out. The Norton Centenary Lectures.
We can talk more about these when we do some signings, because we're going to be giving some of these away.
Yeah, these are looking really beautiful all together. But there is sometimes some books are so precious, I don't keep them on my open shelf. I keep them enclosed here, and I want to show you a couple of those. You'll understand why. This is something very important, but we will look at that later, what I'm doing with those. This is the Houghton Shahnameh. It's the Shahnameh of Firdausi. Let's find a place where we can maybe open this up. And the Houghton Rare Books Library at Harvard brought these out in 2 volumes. These are very rare collector's editions now. And let's look, they're heavy too.
This be folio size?
Yeah.
So what is the significance of this?
Well, the Shahnameh is really sort of the jewel of the Persian literary tradition. It's Book of Kings. And Firdausi is the author. This is part of this is the heart of the Persian literary heritage. And Houghton had brought, this is a particular folio that Houghton had brought out. And I think it was a very limited edition number of them were made. And there are, look at this, look at that. I want to show you some in the color. There you go. So let's see what year, 1981. This is so beautiful. Look at the colors. And you know, when we were looking at the Murty books, I had mentioned of the different kinds of scripts. I said Nask for Arabic, Nastaliq for Persian and Urdu. Nask and Nastaliq are basically the same kind of script. In Arabic, you write completely horizontally, right to left. Persian, same script system, but at kind of slants. See? Slants. So that's called Nastaliq when it's at that kind of slant. It's very elegant. Modern Persian doesn't print that way anymore. They've also moved to making it completely horizontal. But Urdu in India still writes in the slant. So when I learned Urdu in college, I learned to write in that hand, which could seem very antiquated for modern Persian, but it has. Yeah, I learned the Urdu and the Nastaliq script. So what I'm saying is it's the elegance of this, printing it. So for our Murti, we have two different kinds of Perso-Arabic script. One that's totally horizontal, the other that's at the slant. It's a little harder to read if you're not used to it, but you know, it's what we were saying a little while ago, right? When you looked at that index card from the 1930s and cursive, right? But if that's something you're accustomed to reading, people, I'm sure, could read that cursive. But look here, what a beautiful red. Look, this ink must be so good. Look at how it's stayed. So 1981, it was Harvard University Press published it for the Fogg Art Museum, which is a major Harvard art museum. And Stuart Cary Welch is an amazing, amazing art historian. So it's just, this is one of my personal favorite things, collection. This is something that I really treasure. I feel very lucky that I have 2 volumes of this. You can see that I like it so much, and this is so valuable. I keep it inside
We were talking about these earlier.
Oh yes, this is exactly. These are some of the first that came out, and Chip Rossetti had sent these to me. Al-Shafi. This is the Library of Arabic Literature, NYU Press. This is a gazelle, so you know it has something to do with Abu Dhabi, which the gazelle is associated with, and I will let your readers do a little Googling to find out how etymologically what a gazelle has to do with Abu Dhabi. But it's beautiful, isn't it? Look at this. The turquoise, the dark blue, the white. I think they did a really good job.
And books in Arabic, they're opened in the...
They are, but because this is that's a great question, but because this is an English language translation, the book still works like as you would, because the target language drives the publishing, not the source language. So we also have, books that are in Persian, and Persian is left, right to left, and read. You would open the book, but the book's oriented in a way for the English language reader, because that's the primary reader. If you can read Persian and Arabic fluently, you don't need a translation. So, but what's happening is this. This line is running like this, and this side, so this is recto, this is verso, right? Recto, the right side, verso, the other side. This is running this way. So if you could read both sides, it'd be kind of interesting, isn't it? Your eye is going in two different directions, and the gutter of the book is where it sort of meets. This is the gutter.
And you have the numerals.
And you have the numerals in
Because Arabic
both.
numerals actually are originally from what we call Arabic numerals. They're from India, right?
Yeah, they're called, so scholars call them Hindu-Arabic numerals, but yes, this way of having numerals as opposed to Latin numerals, it really was very helpful to be able to use, and then you can use fractions are a lot easier when you adopt these numerals. Decimals are a lot easier. Without these kinds of numerals, and I'm sure your readers know the invention of zero, you couldn't do algebra, you couldn't do calculus. But there's still a lot of advancement in ancient science and mathematics. The Greeks are amazing for it, but not through numerals. You know how, right? Geometry. That's why the Greeks are solving a lot of problems through geometry. And the Arabic influence through further East India is going to be in algebra, right? So, but you needed the numerals to get the algebra. So anyways, good catch. There was something else that came out of my secret shelf, so I'm going to show you this before we go sit down. You know how we looked a little while ago at how old book files used to be in paper? So a few years ago, I had a message from the widow of a very famous, long ago Harvard University Press author, Eric Segal. And this is his book file. And it was very interesting to look at things going back to the 1960s. Here we have something from 1968, second printing. Please reprint 1500, bind 1500, price will remain $6.95, trade discount. Books wanted, February 1970. I wasn't even born then. Advertising appropriation, $300. I really wish the word appropriation was still used for marketing departments. I'm going to ask my colleagues who place ads to call it advertising appropriation. 2,320 copies of this title have been distributed through 9/29/69. DH. I don't know who DH was, but DH kept excellent records, and for that, we thank her. I look at these a lot. These are, this name I know, Maud Wilcox. She used to be the editor-in-chief in the 70s. Her children.
And that was your the title that they then changed.
Yes.
So you're
I
sort
sit
of an
where,
editor-in-chief.
yes, yes. Maud's children wrote to me a couple years ago during the pandemic. They're all. But look at this. Isn't it wonderful? Remember when people had carbon copies? I bet many of your viewers don't know what a carbon copy is, but maybe you can add that.
When you go to the mechanic, they sometimes have those.
Yeah.
And you have the executive size of paper.
Yes, yes. I like also what's really nice about being able to look through old files. Not that it's like being a detective and you're learning something about how that book was put together. But the material, you know, and touching.
Sort of linen.
Yeah, and like this is a law firm in New York, Lazaro, Rettig and Sundal, who is, I guess, representing an agreement between Harvard University Press and Harper and Row. Yeah, this is an airmail from 1972. There was something that I found here that I wanted to show you.
Is an airmail a postcard basically, or a telegram?
Usually airmails were sent they were international mail, you know, so you would get an airmail from abroad, and it was, instead of using an envelope, sometimes it's a fold out. When I was young, I grew up in India, I used to write airmails to relatives living abroad. You fill that out, you fold it, and you put it in the mail. For those of your authors who don't know who Eric Segal is, he was a classicist who also wrote a book called Love Story, which became a very famous film. It was here's an ad for Eric Segal and Love Story. The #1 bestseller over 9 months on the New York Times bestseller list. Kind of cool, huh? What's really great is, you know, when people save we save things digitally, but what you don't get then is like these kinds of somebody's letterhead, right? Here I can see Harper and Row Publishers. This is what their stationery looked like. And how else will we know these kinds of things? So I find this very interesting. Here is another aerogram. This is from Curtis Brown in London. I mean, it's really like, you know, for anyone who ever wants to, I bet, has anybody ever seen a Western Union message? Look at this. And you know what's fun? This telefax is written entirely in Latin by Eric Segal. I also like it says deliver, do not phone. I guess it would be kind of funny if somebody phoned this Latin message. So anyways, it's you can also see these are a writer's messages to their editor. I have not made arbitrary changes in the manuscript a la Balzac, who was a maniac with his proofs, as in much else. Where I have caused a paragraph to be reset, it was with full knowledge that it might cost me dollars, but that it would enhance the value of the manuscript by much more than the cost, and so on. We get messages of basically the same content, but it's less elegantly written and an email. So
Some people are going to want to know what kind of coffee you drink.
they are.
Definitely.
I drink stolen coffee from my boss's assistant's office.
Do you know what brand it is?
I fear it's some sort of off-brand Nespresso.
Yes. What about the book award?
Oh yeah, there's a book award. We won a book award. We've won some book awards. I thought this one was pretty cool. It's the National Book Award, and Bernard Bailyn won this in 1974 for a book called The Ordeal of Thomas Hutchinson. It's a book way ahead of its time. Bailyn is, of course, a great American historian and wrote about the intellectual origins of the American Revolution. But that book, Thomas Hutchinson was what we would call a loyalist or a Tory. And that book is ahead of its time because, you know that saying, history is written by the victors, right? American history is written, therefore, by the victors too, who just happen to be Americans, people we call patriots. So all of American history is a triumphant narrative of colonists who, fought against the crown and, Boston Tea Party, etc. Hey, you grew up in Lexington, I grew up in Cambridge. We imbibe this history. But in 1974, Bud Bailyn wrote The Ordeal of Thomas Hutchinson in the way in which, sort of how a loyalist was treated by the Puritans, the patriots, and it's kind of the dark side of what it means to be a patriot, and it's pretty awful for him. And I have it up there not just because I'm proud of the fact that the press I work for, publish books like this. National Book Award is a pretty big deal. I found it in a room in the basement and I wiped it off and I put it there. But I actually put it there because that's a perfect example of real scholarship always goes against the grain. It actually is not telling the story we all want to hear. Of course we all want to hear that, boo King George, yay Americans, but that story that's a very serious historian there, but something about what the ethical obligations of winners are and how those who end up on the wrong side also deserve to be treated properly. And we see that happening all the time, right?
We have the John Adams. John Adams famously defended
That's exactly right.
a redcoat.
Exactly right. And that's always been a part of New England history, right? It's a little bit more complicated than just kind of us versus them, right? So anyways, that's the story behind that.
There's also this really interesting Belknap Press, the imprint. Could you say a little bit about the Image of the Black and Western Art?
Image of the Black and Western Art. Oh, this is a beloved series. I did all these books with Henry Louis Gates Jr. and David Bindman, art historian, who actually just passed away last month. This series actually has history that goes back to the 1960s, during the height of the civil rights movement. Dominique de Menil, who is an American philanthropist based in Houston. The Menil Foundation is from the family. The Rothko Chapel very well known. She was an arts patron, French by origin, but spent all her life in Texas. Anyway, started a project where she wanted to, the background of this is the civil rights movement, and started a project which was about collecting images of people of African descent, Black people, throughout the history of Western art. So beginning with ancient Egypt and Greece and Rome and all the way to the 19th century. I think originally the aim of this was to kind of, fight prejudice and misunderstandings or stereotypes about Black people, but through art history, since she was an arts patron. The project, they started making these books, but it stopped somewhere in the 80s. And then one day, at my second year at the press, I came to work, and on my desk was a note. There was actually one of those folders, looks like that, like a manila folder, and a note from the then director of the press, Bill Sisler, who said, "Come see me." And just that. And I didn't know anything about this series or the books, and I went to see Bill, and he said, "I want you to pick this up and finish the series and republish the ones that we've done and just take care of it." I said, "Okay." He said, "Do you know this series?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "All right, here's a cardboard box. Go familiarize yourself. And do you know Skip Gates?" Him I did know. I said, "Yes, I know him." So that's how I got into that. That was around 2008. Barack Obama had just been elected to his first term in office. So one of the things I remember is, so we reissued some of the older books, finished what had stalled since the 1980s, and then I added 2 more volumes, which are the image of the Black and Western art in the 20th century, because the original vision of the series by Madame de Menil ended in the 19th century, but if you want to have Black artists representing Black people, you have to get into 20th century art, right? Because from antiquity to the 19th century, we're really looking at white artists representing Black people. So I had asked Skip Gates, if I finish this series, I want 2 things. One is I want to go to the end of the 20th century. And 2 is, can we do 1 book that's about the image of the Black in non-Western art? So that's that one, the image of the Black in African and Asian art. Because I also wanted to look at how did Africans depict themselves? How did Asians depict Africans? That's it. And when we wrote the copy for that, the National Gallery of Art is where all these books were launched. The National Gallery was such a good friend of the series. Their bookshop always had these books, and they held these amazing public lectures. We wrote this very optimistic copy. Telling you this story makes me think, my God, it was so long ago. But we said, I remember using the phrase, the age of Obama, because it was 2008 and DC was really happy at that point, right, to welcome a young Barack and Michelle Obama and their girls for very little. So by the time I finished this series, I think we were coming to the end of the second Obama term. So that's it in a nutshell. They're beautiful. Can I show you a little bit of the inside? It's a famous Matisse.
And that's actually, this is on the cover of the catalog we're going to look at later.
Oh, okay. Yes, that year maybe David Beinman, he just passed away a few weeks ago. So you have an idea. I mean, it's by some of it's multiple authors, essays by some of the top art historians around the world, and amazing, amazing color art. So.
Could you say a few words about Henry Louis Gates Jr.?
Henry Louis Gates Jr. is a professor of literature, African American studies at Harvard. He is trained, I don't know many people know this, he's trained originally as a scholar of the 18th century. My favorite book by him, he wouldn't mind me saying this, I know him very well, is a book called Signifying Monkey, which was his first book, and is the classic Chef's Kiss, such a smart book. From the 80s. It has been fundamental to not just Harvard, I think in the United States, the establishment of African American studies and the academic study of African American literature in general. And of course, he's very, very influential, has a lot of, now he does a lot of PBS series, he does documentaries, he also has a series on finding your roots, your genealogy. Yes, I did this book with Skip more recently called Who's Black and Why. This actually took him back to 18th century. This is a never before translated series of essays, believe it or not, here's Skip now. In the early 18th century, the Bordeaux Royal Academy of Sciences announced a competition to scholars, intellectuals, scientists, anybody around the world on the causes of blackness, and by extension, the causes of the inferiority of people of African descent. It's something what Skip would call the Dead Sea Scrolls of racism in the West, of anti-Black racism. People from around Europe sent in essays. They're competing for a prize, and there are all sorts of explanations ranging from the pseudoscientific to the biblical to, everything, historical. And it really is kind of, if you look at those essays that were written in French and Latin because that was the language of scholarship in the 18th century, French because a lot of the people writing in were French. It's like finding 18th century thought on what today we would call anti-Black racism under amber. It's like preserved. And for 2 centuries, these essays were in Bordeaux, untranslated. And Skip and some scholars found it, and this is the first translation of all of them into English. I mean, no one really looked at it. And Skip wrote the introduction, and we published it, and it went on to be quite a successful book. And to the point that it also got into popular culture. There's this TV show, I think it's HBO, that does And Just Like That, which is a sequel to Sex and the City, picking up where the Friends left off in the 90s. So in season 1 of And Just Like That, this book is very prominently featured. There's the character who is reading. She's an academic, a Black woman in New York, and she's in a bar, and she's reading this book. And because, this cover is very easy to spot, it appears in her bookshelf. Then there was Vogue magazine did a piece with the person who curates books for TV shows, right? Like, what do you put on a set? What does this character's bookshelf look like? This is really kind of, up your alley, right? So there's a job, imagine, I didn't know these jobs exist, of people who, it's like a subset of being the set designer, right? You're the book curator. And so you have to think about this character would have these books on her shelf, and this character would have this on her bedside table. And this is what she would be reading in a bar where she meets a very nice man. And this book got picked as that, which I thought that was kind of rather fabulous. You know, we have these really beautiful annotated editions. Great set of Jane Austens. Let's look at it here. And I had a colleague, John Kulka, who's now the editorial director of the Library of America. He did these books. He's amazing editor. This is one of my, I know the Austens are amazing, but this is a personal favorite. That's why I have this in my office. The annotated Lincoln, edited by Harold Holzer, and Thomas Horrocks. Holzer is a very big Lincoln authority. First of all, I don't know if you can touch this. Just feel it's really beautiful end papers. I mean, this is Lincoln's writings. This is amazing. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I'm gonna
So you have to get access to archives or a museum or something.
Yes. Oh, many, many, many archives and museums. I mean, this is such a gift for the Lincoln fan. And so you get to read the historical writings, but you have like little explanations on the side that give you richer context and great images and all sorts of things, photographs and so forth. Look at this. This is Lincoln's first photograph with a beard. There's a whole book there to be done on Lincoln and images that he allowed of himself. You know, he was very aware and referred to himself as sort of the homeliest man, and yet he also had a lot of photos and images of him. And this sort of, you know, when Lincoln's beard first appears is something historians are interested in. Page from Lincoln's first inaugural address.
Wow.
Printer's proof. Let me see if I can show you. Lincoln is my particular favorite, but we have also a whole series of beautiful Jane Austens. Let me just show you one of those. Pride and Prejudice. Pat Myers Spax is a very respected scholar of 18th century novel. And this is, again, the editor is John Kulka. Look at how beautiful this is. This is like an absolute gift for the Janeite. I want to get to some of the pictures for you. This is Jane Austen's portable writing desk.
Is that her on that last page?
Yeah, it's a portrait of Jane Austen. You know, when you asked me why cloth, this book is actually bound in cloth. You can touch it and you'll see. Not all hardcovers are anymore. It's too expensive. But you'll see some, you know, some publishers, and for really special editions like this, you still bind, you use actual cloth.
Can you talk about just how you got the idea for this, and you know, what do you get out of an annotated edition?
That's so funny. You were asking me this. Should we sit down for a second? Because I think I was just, I mean, this is, again, I have to tell you that this really is my former colleague, John Kolka's baby. He did these beautiful annotated editions. But when he was making these books, it was around the time ebooks were becoming very popular. And not just ebooks, but, you know, what's called enriched content. You know, so where publishers give you something extra, right, with your ebook. So it could be like more images or click on this. So I actually remember doing this as an experiment for myself. I read Austen, I believe it was Pride and Prejudice, three ways. So I read the kind of like a Penguin paperback edition of Jane Austen, just anything you can get. I read an enriched edition electronically where I could get, and I read this because I was trying to actually make myself the guinea pig and see what kind of pleasure I derive and what do I read and how. So the first thing I learned, which is really anybody can figure this out, this is not a book I would take to bed because it's very heavy and it could fall on my face. This is a sitting upright book. And that actually has to be mentioned because there are a lot of fiction that's a lying down read. I mean, they're amazing artists' representation of women lying down and reading fiction.
Reclining.
Yes, and possibly being corrupted because novels were very, very bad. Remember, I mean, it's kind of a shocking genre when Jane Austen's writing. Not terribly respectable either. I mean, not quite porn, but like not great either. But so this, I thought, is definitely I need to be sitting. I might even need a table in front of me. I think of an annotated edition. This is just me, by the way. This is not like some HUP consensus. So I don't think of annotated editions as the kind of book I would read. It's not the first time you're reading it. I mean, you're not going to read Pride and Prejudice for the first time. So this is for like the returning lover of this book or the fan. And you don't read it sequentially. It's a kind of a random access thing, like you pick up and you look at it. You know, novels, if you think of as like the ideal sequential reading text, right? Chapter 1, chapter 2, that's what the plot is for. What happened next? Oh my God, you know, what did Darcy do? I don't know what will happen in the end. But because, you know, pages are laid out, your eye is simultaneously everywhere, right? You're not. So it's a different kind of pleasure. There's a lot of pleasure. So but it's a different kind of pleasure, and that's what I was trying to find out. What kind of pleasure it is. I think it's about a kind of reading that is rereading. That's about pausing in a moment. That's about falling down beautiful rabbit holes. Like, oh my God, look at this drawing room, state chairs, right? It's not driven by what happened nextism, which is what a good old dog-eared paperback caters to that need very well. I still haven't figured out what the enriched ebook does. So where does that fall? Is that driven by the love of what happened next? Or is it a fall down a beautiful rabbit hole? And not really sure.
Okay.
I might be wrong, but that's sort of, But anyways, that was my a month of Jane Austen 3 ways. I'm not sure any of my colleagues thought that was a wise use of my time. But
Maybe we can head upstairs.
let's do that.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about this collection of Emily Dickinson books you have here?
We have 3 Emily Dickinson books. We have the Poems of Emily Dickinson, which is the go-to collection of poetry for poetry lovers, students, teachers. Anyone who teaches Emily Dickinson knows this one. This is the Poems of Emily Dickinson as she preserved them. So I would say this is a kind of, if this is the entering Emily Dickinson's front parlor, this is where you're getting into a little deeper into the house, and you can actually be in Emily's study and see how she is preserving her own poems, how she would like them to be seen and read. So this is wonderful for someone who's a lover of these poems and wants to go a little deeper. And now we're really into the innermost sanctum of Emily's metaphorical house, the Letters of Emily Dickinson, which we published very recently. Emily Dickinson very famously was, somewhat enigmatic American character. We are obsessed with her, yet we know so little about her. She certainly didn't leave an autobiography or a memoir. But the Letters of Emily Dickinson, I would say, really are the closest you can get to sort of have the feeling of understanding a life of the poet behind those famous lines. It's the closest you can get to autobiographical writings.
Could you talk a little bit about Belknap, the imprint?
Yes, so of course, the famous Belknap imprint, which has this paw-raised lion wearing a little crown on its head. The Belknap imprint was established in the 1950s, and it's the result of a benefactor, Mr. Belknap, who gave a gift to Harvard University Press. And a few years later, his mother also actually, as part of her estate, added to that gift. And these are intended exclusively for the publishing of books. And the imprint was set up originally a little bit like an imprint at Oxford University Press that's called the Clarendon Press of the Oxford University Press. Some readers might recognize that from the spines of their books. And it really is meant to be an imprint that we save for the best of the best. All these books are really wonderful, but this is sort of the cream of the crop. The Belknap imprint is actually bestowed by the Harvard University Press's Board of Syndics. That is, no book is signed or contracted as a Belknap book. It's only towards the part of the, when we are getting ready to publish the book, the Board of Syndics, which is our faculty board, makes the final selection. The press nominates, but the faculty vote on it. And that's what the Belknap is meant to be. And the endowment helps us offset the cost of making these books. And the way I like to think about it is we get to make some really high quality books, best of American bookmaking, best of scholarship, really nice production values, and we get to price it very modestly. So I think of the Belknap gift that came to the press in the 50s is ultimately it's our responsibility to pass that gift on to our readers in the form of these beautiful books that are priced in an affordable way.
Is there anything about this edition specifically that is sort of a hallmark of a Belknap Press?
This, the letters of Emily Dickinson? Oh, yes, goes without saying. Kriston Miller and Donald Mitchell are two leading Emily Dickinson scholars. We've worked with them before. This book, the letters are the result of years of work, probably decades of scholarship, but years of actually working on this. This book was signed, I want to say nearly 15 years ago. I remember when, how long this has been in the making. So it's meticulous scholarship. This is it's something I think the reader really expects from us and from Harvard as well as Belknap, that when you come to this, we're essentially, it's the reassurance that this is the latest and best in Dickinson scholarship and archival research and understanding who Emily Dickinson was and, what these, how these letters are to be understood. It's safe to say that there is no other edition of Dickinson's letters currently that come even close to what this offers.
So this is going to be one of the books we're giving away to a lucky member of the audience, so maybe you could inscribe it for us.
With pleasure. And I really wish I could have welcomed everyone in your audience in person, but that's for another day where we would set up real tours. But it was fun to do a tour with you, and hopefully people enjoyed joining us virtually. So I am going to thank your viewers for coming on a trip to HUP with you.
Thank you. So now I've got a few books I'd like you to inscribe for Greg, who was my first guest. Did a library tour through all of his Loebs and I Tattis and Dumbarton Oaks, and now we're sending him the Murtys. So maybe you could start off by just inscribing these two, and he'll add these to his collection, and I know he'll be very grateful to have these on his bookshelf.
With pleasure.
Here's the I Tatti.
Wonderful Ginny Brown's Boccaccio translation. This is one of the first I Tattis that we did. Virginia Brown, great scholar. The late Virginia Brown was the wife of the general editor, Jim Hankins.
And then here's the Dumbarton Oaks.
Yes, the Douay-Rheims edition of the Vulgate Bible. This was the first book Jan and I discussed when we were planning. We knew we had to start the Dumbarton Oaks series with the Vulgate Bible. And Bolesha, yes. Greg has now had his book signed in 4 languages. Oh, wow. Yay. I wish I knew who Greg was. This is a mystery.
I said maybe you should visit someday.
Okay.
I'd like you to now sign your, do you call it an autobiography, memoir?
It's a memoir.
Memoir. This is a very rare hardcover edition.
I am really amazed you tracked this edition down in America, and I wish you had told me. I might have found one at home, but thank you.
And now we're going to get started with the books for our audience members. So we've got a couple Heinemans here.
Oh, I am a public school girl. I feel so much trepidation in writing on books, especially these books. These are so wonderful. You sure you want me to write on these books? Ooh, somebody already wrote before. Look at that. G.F. McKibben, Woodland Road, Mansfield, Ohio.
I bought these used. These are the first 2 I bought. And
This is in a seminary, in a bookstore in Texas, bought in 1929.
Seminary Hill, Texas.
Plautus. Oh, the Brearley School Library. Nice.
Maybe we can put these over there. And we've got some of the newer editions.
This was the first Loeb, actually, and it still is, Loeb 1. I hope we find the Golden Fleece.
And you were originally the humanities editor, right? So these came under your purview.
I was once upon a time the classics and religion editor, and for a while, before Mike Sullivan was appointed, 10 years ago, I used to, in addition to signing books, I also looked after the Loeb and I Tatti. That's why I know those books. But the reason I wrote The Best Hellenist Ever under Jeff Henderson's name is Jeff is not just the general editor of the Loeb Classical Library, and his Aristophanes is still chef's kiss. That's the best Aristophanes translation in English I think there is, but he's a fantastic Hellenist, so someone should write it down somewhere about him.
And now we have another edition of Sufi lyrics.
And this is for your viewers, right?
All the rest of these are.
Okay.
Next, we have a very popular learning book. Stephanie was telling me about this, so that would be a good one to include. And then we have these, and maybe you could say a little bit about the Norton series.
The Norton lectures were started in 1925, and they are named after a very famous scholar and Harvard professor, Charles Eliot Norton. And here's a little background tidbit about the Norton lectures that many have forgotten. This lecture series is named after Charles Eliot Norton, but the gift was given to the university by James Loeb, who was Charles Eliot Norton's student, and the same James Loeb of the Loeb Classical Library. And James Loeb wanted to be a classicist, wanted to be a professor. He was a Jew, in late 19th century, early 20th century America, when the professoriate was closed to Jewish people. I have always looked at what James Loeb did with the Loeb Classical Library, and subsequently giving the gift in his favorite teacher's name, what became the Norton Lectures, as a way for him to be part of something that America at the time would not let him be part of. He also was, by the way, of the philanthropist behind the Juilliard School in New York. So, which is a way of saying the Loeb Classical Library, the Norton Lectures, and Juilliard are actually all connected. So back to the Norton Lectures, the first lectures were delivered in 1925, so this is our 100th anniversary, our centenary year. And we wanted to celebrate this year. The Norton Lectures are really Harvard's crown jewel of lectures. There are a number of significant lectures that are delivered here, but the Norton is really in a kind of league of its own, and you can just see the names of the people. So we selected 5 classic Norton lecturers. The Norton Lectures are always delivered by people, artists, literary scholars, or people in music, so it kind of rotates. And I selected here 5 books representing the literary, visual, and musical arts. So we have John Ashbery, famous American poet, Umberto Eco, of course, the theorist and novelist, Igor Stravinsky, music, Ben Shahn, American artist, and Jorge Luis Borges, novelist. And because, of course, none of these Norton lectures are with us, we wanted to introduce these classic thinkers and artists to a new generation in the 21st century. So I asked some contemporary writers and critics and musicians to write the foreword, and I think of their remit really was to introduce these amazing Norton lecturers to a new young generation of readers. And all these books have been newly edited and presented. Beautiful design by Evan Gaffney, art directed by our creative director, Gabrielle Wilson. I think they look really cool together. And I love how the Belknap lion is marching in many colors.
Umberto Eco is actually one of Greg's, I think, top 3 authors, so maybe we can dedicate that one to him, inscribe that one to him.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Is it because of the name of the rose?
It'll come to me, but
okay.
It's one of
so
the
this one.
Pendulum. What is it? The Pendulum. The Pendulum book. It's got pendulum in the title.
It's escaping me too, but I think I know what you're talking about. This is for Greg, right? Then 6 Walks in the Fictional Woods. These are for your viewers, right, who have traveled with us through HUP offices today. Okay. This Stravinsky, look at this. I mean, it's amazing. here is Stravinsky, the foreword by a major musician and music theorist, Vijay Iyer, and the preface to the original edition was by George Sepharis. So this is, and I love this drawing of Stravinsky by Picasso. There's a little interesting thing about the John Ashbery. I thought a lot about who I would ask to write the foreword for each of these. Vijay was very easy because he's also a pianist himself and a theorist. I asked Stephanie Burt, who's a poetry critic and also an HUP author, but is something else I knew, that Stephanie, when she was very, very young, I think as an undergraduate, had actually attended the original John Ashbery lectures when Ashbery came to campus. So it was nice for her 30 years later to write the foreword to this. When we first selected Ben Shahn as the one person we would include here who is a visual artist, there was a little worry. Does anyone remember who Ben Shahn is anymore? Luckily, Ben Shahn's having a moment. Actually, there's a wonderful Ben Shahn exhibition in Jewish Museum in New York. But the way I would introduce Ben Shahn to a person born in this century is, before there was Shepard Fairey, there was Ben Shahn. And you have to understand sort of political art. You have to go back to mid-century America. And Adam Gopnik wrote the foreword, which is one of the amazing foreword. And the thing about Adam Gopnik is that he himself is a trained art historian. So it was the matches again, finding somebody who actually understands these disciplines.
And Shepard Fairey is the iconic Obama.
Exactly. And that's why I think for people who know sort of, when they think of political art, or kind of, sort of very instrumentally political art, right? Not art that's sort of political after the fact, but art that is made for politics, like Shepard Fairey. That's why I said before Shepard Fairey, there was Ben Shahn. So Viet Nguyen actually delivered the Norton lectures himself in academic year 23-24, and we published his book To Save and to Destroy earlier this year. While Viet was preparing his own lectures, he read a lot of the older Norton lectures. And one of the things that kind of kept coming up when I looked at his own notes for his lectures is how much he refers to Borges and the Borges lectures. So when I knew we would do the Borges, it was very easy, that decision about the foreword, So I had to just go back and say, Viet, you've talked enough about how much you learned from Borges in your lectures. It's time now to write the foreword. And luckily for us, he did. I think it's a great introduction. It's one novelist's introduction to another novelist.
And Viet, I think, is the first set of lectures that's on YouTube, right?
There are actually other lectures on YouTube too, but his is. If you go to the Mahindra Humanities Center website at Harvard, you will see some other ones on YouTube. Yeah.
There's a special auditorium he was in that was, it's like a memorial for World War II. And
Yes, he was in Memorial Hall, which is in Sanders Theater. Yes, the building was actually originally, I believe it was actually built for the Civil War dead and not World War II.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think they said it was two wars. And
that was the second, because I'm thinking now about the style of architecture, and it's not a...
sort of medieval, almost looking.
Yeah, it's sort of, it has a kind of Victorian Gothic, and so that's more mid-19th century America, but it's for the Civil War dead.
Do you want to say a few words about Thomas Piketty?
Sure. I think if there is an economist that non-economics majors or economists have heard of in recent times, it's Thomas Piketty. He's a French economist who works on income inequality. These books were published by my former colleague Ian Malcolm, who was our economics editor. The first book we published was Capital in the 21st Century. Both are translations from the French. I remember when this book, we were first discussing it, and Piketty had said he is like Marx, but with better data. And we thought, okay. But, turned out to be a very, very successful book. It's a very long book, but I feel like it can be represented in one formula. The formula is this. R is greater than G. R stands for rate of increase in investment. Growth is growth of income. Another way of saying this is inherited wealth will always outstrip people who have to make their money through a salary. That's 200 years of data summed up, and Piketty's book has lots and lots of formulas in it, but R is greater than G became the kind of iconic formula. We even had companies asking us if we would brand that and do t-shirts and so forth. This came out, after the Great Recession, during the period of, sort of Occupy Wall Street and all those things, and there was a great interest, I think, in America, in the West, on talking about this topic. Income inequality itself is it's a classic topic in economics. The last time that was a hot topic was the 1960s, and since then it fell into, it just was not a fashionable topic for economists. And I think its sort of rise of kind of general readers' interest in it has a lot to do, of course, with what was going on in the U.S. and where, particularly in the U.S., I think, where for the first time a generation of people were faced with the idea that their standard of living might not be better than their parents', in fact, might be a little less. And because since World War II, the U.S. has just kind of seen only things, your home can be a little bigger than your parents. If they had one car, you have two. If they didn't have AC, you have it, and so on and so forth. Most of the world didn't see that, but the U.S. did. So I think that historically for America was a moment. So I won't write it, but I'll tell you, if capital, if I was asked to explain the relationship between capital in the 21st century and capital and ideology, I would say this tells you the what. This tells you the why. The capital and ideology explains the why. That's it. And there were two hot topics in economics in the 60s under the big label of inequality. One was income inequality, and the other was the inequality of nations. And which is also the economic inequality of nations, because the 60s are a great period of post-war decolonization, right? And the rise of sort of developing nations, IMF, World Bank, et cetera. I find it kind of interesting, I think, in the 20-teens, we saw the return of income inequality within a nation as a voguish topic. We haven't yet seen the return of the inequality of nations in the same way. That continues to be, I think, an old topic from the 60s.
I think it might also be good to just show maybe a couple of the diagrams or really graphs, because those are a key element of, even if you're not going to read the whole thing, just getting a sense of the graphs in there.
Sure.
And I think that's also, would you say, is part of the Belknap advantages that you have the funds to be able to...
Absolutely. I'm connecting, actually, for your reader, the two books. Yes, so, these are very long books. These are books that were originally written in French. They have lots of equations, everything that, received wisdom says, hey, it doesn't work. This scares readers. It's too much. I mean, it's this. It's this. It's more of this. And, this came in at around 700 pages. This is even longer. Yes, there you go. This is a young Thomas Piketty. There he is in his classroom. And this too, very, very serious. And it was, yeah. It had to be translated. It's translated, by the way, by a kind of the gold standard of translations from French into English, Art Goldhammer. But this is the reason why this book was done by Harvard University Press, because no publisher in New York would take this book on, because common sense tells you this is not a book for general readers, right? But that's the magic thing about publishing. Common sense often just tells you nothing. If we really had the formula, we would be all publishing bestsellers. And I also think that's something kind of fun. I like that, because it tells you that actually human beings are complex. What we think people want to read and what they are. I like that. It's frustrating for me as someone who works in publishing, but I think it's good for me as someone who also happens to be a human being, that we're not that easy to read and understand, and things that tick all the boxes for what we would want sometimes falls flat. TV show, movies, it happens, right? And things that seem completely unlikely just click, right? But once we published this, of course, New York publishers came knocking on good old HUP's door and saying, will you please sell us the paperback rights? And, because we didn't, of course.
And now we have the Indian classics. We're giving two of these away.
to visitors to the site. Okay, all right. These are also people who traveled with us virtually today? Okay.
And this, could you say a little bit about the launch party you did for this and just what this marks?
Well, this we put together to celebrate 10 years of publishing of the Murty Classical Library of India. The series was founded in 2010, but the first books came out in 2015. So this year marks the 10 years of continuous publishing. We have put out books every year. We have, by this fall, we'll have 50 books that we have published. We wanted to do something that would celebrate it and also something that could be a little, I think of it as an introduction or a little invitation. So it's 10 Indian classics because it's 10 years. I took 10 selections from the books we've published in 10 different languages, and only the English. I wanted to keep it to kind of a book around 200 pages, and it's introduced by a poet, Ranjit Hoskote, who's also on the editorial board of the series. And that's it. That's the kind of...
Could you show us the table of contents?
Yes.
And who designed the cover on this?
The cover is designed by Gabrielle Wilson. She is the creative director of HUP, and you could see part of the inspiration. These little elephants is the Murty logo elephants, and the logo was designed by Andrea Stranger, and it was part of a international design competition we held, and she won that. So it's our band of elephants marching across. Okay.
And we have this. This is, I lied, this is actually the one other that's for me. This is the in-depth history of the various classical libraries.
Oh, yes, of course. This is a really, these are all the names I've been telling you about. Jim Hankins was the general editor for I Tatti, Sheldon Pollock, general editor of the Murty Library, and Jan Zielkowski, who was the general editor for Dumbarton Oaks. Jim just stepped down this year. So Jim, Shelley, and Jan were all, by my counts, the founding general editors of those 3 series. Jeff Henderson continues to be the general editor of Loeb.
So if people want this sort of little bit of institutional history and just history of these series, this is the book to go for.
This is a great book to go for. I mean, it was part of a conference, but there is, some of the things in here, I mean, there are a lot of people who have written here, but I would go to the ones that were written by each of the general editors, right, about the series that they founded or were responsible for. You get a little behind the scenes look.
And these are another sort of historical thing. These are, you could say, the predecessors in some ways of the Loebs, where there wasn't the English translation.
These are beautiful. It's amazing.
And I know some classics nerds in the audience will really want to get their hands on these.
Good.
And then to round things out, we have the intro for people who are just getting started on their classics journey. It's somewhat similar to the 10 Indian classics.
Yes, it is, but this has the most interesting backstory ever. This was made actually for booksellers. It was never made, it was part of when there was sort of a, Loeb too was celebrating, not its 100th, I remember when that was, but we wanted to make a little kind of gift. This was a gift, not for sale, for booksellers, thanking them for stocking Loebs. But they said, this is great, our customers want it. Can you make it or something that we can sell? And that's how we came. So this is accidental publishing at its best.
And then we have some I Tattis. first volume in the series?
It's the first volume. It continues to be one of the best-selling books in the entire series. And there's a reason. It's Boccaccio, it's Famous Women, and it's also Ginny Brown, who did such a superb job. And, each series, we learned something from this, that when you start a series, the first year, what you put out, it has to be the best of the best, right? You start with a bang. That's how you get the reader's trust and their enthusiasm.
And then we have one volume of each language so people can see the 4 colors here.
Let's pull this. This is the Iberian. That's what I was talking about. This is the newest one. I want to pull out the ribbon so we can really see all the colors. Right. So we have Old English, Iberian, Latin, and Greek. These are also, I'm assuming, for people who would have joined us today. Right. Okay.
And how do you put something like Beowulf in alphabetical order? You just go with Beowulf.
Yeah, with B.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I should have said, on behalf of Grendel.
Could you say a little bit about Iberian as a language?
Yes, but when we say Iberian, because, the Iberian Peninsula, which really includes modern-day Portugal and Spain, so that's why we don't say Spanish, because it's larger than that, and it's in the Middle Ages, this is a different way of organizing that part of Europe and the linguistic tradition. What a fascinating time to be in the Iberian Peninsula in the Middle Ages. I mean, I think it's sort of like you're on the cusp of the Islamic rule of the Iberian Peninsula, sort of the Al-Andalus, but Reconquista is around the corner where, there's the kind of return of the Christian monarchs. The languages that are not just spoken, but what's languages of literary creation, it's going to have a mix of Arabic in it too. I mean, that's why I was really, I mean, we waited for a while. We wanted to have a proper Iberian editorial board set up. But it's such a complex, vibrant part of Southern Europe that is still probably not that well understood by a lot of the general public.
I was reading your dissertation, and you mentioned an interesting anecdote about Franciscan monks mixing 12 varieties of lettuce together.
Mescaline.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote that in 1995, so you're beginning to frighten me, Timothy. That
I didn't read the whole thing. Okay.
Thank God.
Okay.
But you remember where mescaline came from. It is Franciscan monks mixing those leaves. And, remember how in the 90s, mescaline was sort of this kind of, I don't know, cool or bourgeois thing, in people's salads, like pesto. But I found it kind of interesting that the history of mescaline goes back to European medieval monasteries. Yeah, maybe Saint Benedict had mescaline.
And then to round things out, we have the Vulgate. And so start here with Volume 1, the Pentateuch. This must have been a massive project.
Massive project. This is where when touching these books brings back memories for me. This takes me back to 2009 and looking at paper with our then production director, because we had to bind this together, and there were all these discussions. I mean, the laws of physics, this can't hold, it's going to break, and if it breaks, it's the Pentateuch. I'm not going to break the Pentateuch, so do we use Bible paper? Do we, so this is the only book in the Dumbarton Oaks series where we've actually used different paper stock than the other ones, because it was a kind of, I will not break the Pentateuch moment. Please find, dear production colleagues, find us paper that can, we're pushing it. I was, passionate arguments were had. This is nearly 1,200 pages. And I'm glad I did this, because I think people who want the Pentateuch. They don't want 3 of the books and then 2 other books.
So then for volume 2, there is a part A and part B. Here's part A.
Yeah. I love that little oak, it's all these botanical things here because of Dumbarton Oaks and their kind of insignia.
There's a lot of other series actually that are under that.
Yes, and the Dumbarton Oaks Center has their own publication department. All the other Dumbarton Oaks books come from them. We are their distributors, except for the Dumbarton Oaks Medieval Library, which HUP handles, and partly because we know how to do these bilingual editions.
Volume 3, Poetical Books. Volume 4, Prophetical Books, the major prophetical books. Volume 5.
Minor prophetical books and Maccabees. Not many of my colleagues can say they're Bible publishers. But
Do you think you'll ever do a Greek?
I'd be happy to if it came about. Yeah, this is another one where I said, yeah, not going to break it. It's the New Testament. It's going to be in one volume. And see, different paper. Even the color of this paper has changed here. See, it's not that cream.
And then we have the paperbacks of the
Murtys.
Murtys. And that's our final.
That's our final stack of signings. These are so beautiful. Let's pause a moment. We have a new one coming in October. That's gorgeous, kind of an eggplant color with the nice gold motif. These are all designed by the same woman who designed this, Gabrielle Wilson. And these books were kind of meant to be a little bit of eye candy, gateway drug. And in fact, it was requested by our publishing partner in India, HarperCollins. And the CEO said, I need books that pop in bookstores and airports. And it started as a pandemic project. I actually made these two in the first year of the pandemic. And it was a time when we were all, sitting at home and working and learning how Zoom works. Figuring out, how am I ever going to make books if I can't even step outside my house or, go to a grocery store. And the director of the press, George Andreu, introduced me to Gabrielle Wilson and said, talk to her. He knew her from his previous work. And Gabrielle was then in Germany, and we talked on the phone. And she got the brief. And these two are so beautiful. And this book then got picked up by the New York Times that summer because, nobody could travel, nobody could go anywhere during that first year of the pandemic. You remember, before vaccines. So the Times did a piece that was sort of travel through books, travel the world reading books. And they picked this for India. And that told me something, that was amazing, that how it certainly taught me the power of a beautifully done design, and I think it just is such an inviting classic look. It's distinctly Indian, but yet it's absolutely, I think, works anywhere in the world. And then this book has been picked up as a first-year experience book. Those things sometimes colleges do where all freshmen are asked to read the same book before they come in. Often the school gets them that book. So I know Bard, for instance, has twice picked this as their common read, right? So that's nice. That's sort of, the power of design. It's a great translation by Charlie Hallisey, who is a professor at Harvard. The poems are amazing. So all of that came together, right? Charlie's translation, of course, what the poems are about, but Gabrielle's design. So I was very happy that the New York Times said you could travel to India through this 1995 book. Should I make these out to your viewers? Yeah. Now they can travel the world through the books.
Are all of them available in this paperback?
No, I do 1 or 2 paperbacks each year, and always releasing them in October. And the hardcover bilingual editions come out in May. The paperbacks are usually, where I'm taking a selection from a previously published bilingual edition. Mm-hmm. So every bilingual edition doesn't become a paperback. I try to choose, ones that I think will work in that format. So I'm writing here, Travel the World with Murty Classics, and obviously I'm referring a little bit to the Times piece from 4 years ago. But I actually mean not just travel the world in terms of geography. Of course, you can travel all over the world through these books. But, we looked today at so many books from the distant past, from antiquity. And I think, we also travel through time, travel other worlds, right? Not always to find that people were just like us. Sometimes they were. But what I really like about traveling through these books or the Loebs or I Tatti is to sometimes find strangeness, find that, a world that was nothing like the world I live in, or people who think in a way that's completely alien. And that's also sometimes, I think, the idea of things being relatable is sometimes a little overrated for me. I read to escape also. I read to meet strangers and strange people and go to places I've never been to or time periods I'll never live in. So sometimes I have fantasies of like a marketing campaign where it would say the most unrelatable books, because some of this can be unrelatable, but unrelatable is also, I think, a human desire to find that which is strange to us. And books give us that, and books from the world of antiquity give us that. It's a bit like, join the army and see the world. Read an HUP book and see the world.
People should definitely follow your Instagram if they want to see your travels. You do a lot of traveling.
Mm.
I thought your photos of the Louvre and Abu Dhabi were pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an amazing space they've built, the Louvre, and there's some really interesting art there. A lot of really great Assyrian stuff.
What is Assyrian?
Assyrian is, kind of think like, Mesopotamian, Fertile Crescent, just present day Iraq, that kind of world. And interesting, the architecture is also stunning there, yeah.
Was there a library there? Am I remembering that right? There's some kind of...
Well, Assyria is a kingdom, so there is, I think you're thinking of
the Louvre.
Oh, in the Louvre, is there a library?
Dhabi.
No, you might have seen my colleague Stephanie and I had traveled for work to India, and on the way we stopped for a little bit in Doha in Qatar. And there is the National Library of Qatar, which has, I might have posted on Insta, which has really amazing manuscripts from like the Islamic world, medieval and older, just amazing calligraphy and all of that. Yeah, great collection of that.
There were also some photos of you at the New Delhi book. That's like the one. When we did the AMA with Greg, somebody actually invited him to go there and meet him, and so it was cool seeing that photo.
Yeah,
because that's one of the biggest in the world, right? It's like
it is. It's the biggest book fair in Asia. I don't know what that means, but pretty much anything, and I guess by biggest, I suppose we mean maybe by footfall. And if it's big in Asia, it's big because we have a lot of people. The Delhi Book Fair is nice. There's a Calcutta Book Fair. And book fairs in India are not for book publishers, they're for readers. When I was a little girl, I used to love when the book fair came to my hometown, Calcutta, every winter, because that's often when you, as a little kid, you got some books, right? It was a treat. I still really, really love this color, this palm frond.
Does the palm frond represent anything to you?
Yes, not just for me. For each of these, I give the designer Gabrielle like very specific briefs. So I'll tell you. So palm frond, it's sort of the part of the subcontinent where Bulleh Shah lived in, associated with Sufi poetry, date palms. So I was sort of saying something to do with date palms, but I didn't want the tree itself, like the whole tree. The frond is, it's a little bit more abstract. The lotus is often associated in different forms with Buddhism, especially a white lotus. This is a book about Krishna, and who's depicted generally as having very dark blue skin, like he's very dark skinned, but the iconographic tradition is depict him as him in deep blue. And he wears a peacock feather in his hair. He's a very seductive god who lures women from their marriage beds. And so I didn't want the peacock feather, but like the peacock. So like the blue of Krishna and the peacock. So each of these, this is also Krishna. He's a really flirty god. So, he's just kind of always trying to charm the milkmaids. So this is sort of, the milkmaid, which is a lot of Krishna poetry is about. The devotee is the woman, the milkmaid. God is Krishna, and sacred love and erotic love are intertwined. It's no different than some sort of, some medieval saints poetry in Europe too. There's often a kind of mixture of erotic and sacred, or sacred and profane.
Any examples of that come to mind?
Immediately, you gotta get. I did a book called "Word Made Flesh." I'm going to have to think about, especially mystic women in medieval Europe, and their writing. I'll think of it. I'm just blanking right now. I think it's a tradition in world literature. I mean, Sufi poets also do this. The tavern, drunkenness is a form of. It's not really just drunkenness like alcoholism. It's about being in a certain state of ecstasy, right? And the beloved is both the beloved, like someone you're interested in.
Song of Songs.
Yeah, but it's also, the beloved is also the divine, right? And that kind of always out of reach, and all the yearning and all of that. Song of Songs, perfect example, right? So I think it's their Hebrew mystical poetry, actually from medieval Spain, Andalusia, has that. Peter Cole translated those. You should look that up. Adina Hoffman and Peter Cole. I'm forgetting the title of the book, but Yeah. So each of these, they're not just like random patterns or anything. There's a reason, and the designer is sort of working with what's going on inside the book. This is a story, a sea of separation. This is a little an episode from the epic, the Ramayana. This is a part when Ram and his wife Sita and his brother Lakshman are in exile in the forest, and one day Sita sees this golden deer, and she really wants it. She wants him to capture it, and he says, "No, I don't want to." And she said, "No, I really insist." And it's this golden deer, so he leaves her. And he tells her, like, don't come out of the hut while I'm gone. Are you sure I should go? So, no, I really want this golden deer. Something in him knows something's wrong. And he goes away. Turns out it's actually like a demon that's transformed itself as a deer, and precisely to lure him away. And when he's away, main thing is he's away because of the golden deer. And she's abducted by Ravan. And that's really the plot engine, and the rest of it is going to be Ram's rescue of Sita, right? But the way she gets kidnapped in the first place, abducted, is because this golden deer that comes and beguiles her. So the sea of separation, this is, by the way, not the title in the original one. Sometimes I give it slightly more poetic titles based on something from the translation. It's the sea that separates a husband from a wife, but then also it's a story of exile, because Ram is exiled from his kingdom. There's an actual sea that separates the kidnapped Sita from Ram. So this was meant to be a kind of a greenish color of a water, not quite the forest, but this is the golden deer.
That's true.
So anyways, I won't go into each one of these, but believe me, the color, the image, every one of those things, is part of a brief and a kind of way of thinking about how to get to this. Okay, I've done this. I'm just making sure I've done all of these.
Was it difficult to, I'm also a lefty. You've got great writing, great hand.
Was it difficult to do what?
Just, the way you hold the pen is kind of, you don't have to worry about smudging.
Yeah, and I learned when I first had to use a pen, because I was educated in India till I was 12, I had to write with the fountain pen. We weren't allowed to write with ballpoint pens in my school. I don't know why. It was from pencil to fountain pen. I used to go to school with a old-fashioned fountain pen. I had my ink pot. We had to carry that, and I had a little piece of cloth, because sometimes my pen, if we're taking a test, your pen runs out of ink, you have to fill it out. And I had a little rag, we all did, but I never wrote like this. I just knew how to hold my hand in a way that my hand isn't smudging the ink. But it was a great gift of my parents that they didn't try to ever change me, because I lived in India of the 1970s, where teachers would regularly force lefties to write with their right hand. And I remember when I was maybe 4 or something, the teacher sent a note. She writes with her left hand, and my father went to the school and said, "We know, and don't that's okay. She also eats with her left hand. And my parents said that since I was a baby, they knew I was a lefty because they said, you hit with your left hand, you picked up a toy. So I'm a very decidedly a lefty. I mean, I really, you know how some people are a little better with their non-dominant hand? I don't know about you, but I'm no good with my right.
I golf lefty and I
Really?
small at bat lefty. I mean righty. So, but it just feels more intuitive to pull because you're generally stronger pulling than pushing. And so pulling with my dominant side feels more natural. LeBron James was born a lefty, but he's very ambidextrous, and I think it's very valuable athletically to be ambidextrous.
Yeah.
And also just for weightlifting, to constantly have a slight imbalance and weakness, it can lead to injury and other stuff. So I always wish I had, through sports, developed more equally and not had that imbalance. Because I feel like you largely can't get rid of it once you're an adult.
Yeah, I think so too. I was made to believe by my parents that 50% of the population of the world is left-handed, and we see so few because society forces lefties to become right-handed. And I think I was in my 40s when my husband found out I was carrying this belief around all this days. He said, this is definitely not true. They told you this to make you not feel like a freak. And I was like, that's surprising. And everything else, they were perfectly comfortable making me feel like a freak. Why in this one thing? And I was like, I'm pretty sure they're right. And we actually Googled it. He was like, no, Google it. So I was in my 40s, and I was like, hey, it's just half the world is left-handed. Too bad they were forced to be right-handed. And I was so stunned to find out it's more like 10% of the population. And I never...
A lot of presidents.
I should have asked my parent, why did you say this very... I guess when I was little, there was no internet, so they counted on the fact I wouldn't be able to look it up. I really believed them.